immigration will be front and centre at the coming federal election, and I think it's important for those people that are tuned in today to understand what I'm trying to do here is to move a motion for the following matter be referred to the Legal and Constitutional Affairs References Committee for inquiry and report by the 10th of February 2025. There has not been enough of a debate on it, and this is what needs to be done. The failure of the Albanese government's immigration policies to manage population growth and protect Australians' interests, with particular reference to A. the government's failure to meet immigration targets and the impact of allowing record numbers of migrants into the country without adequate planning. B. the role of mass immigration in driving up housing costs, worsening the rental crisis and locking Australians out of home ownership. C. the unchecked influx of international students and the strain this is placing on housing and services. D. the strain on infrastructure, essential services and the environment caused by rapid immigration-driven population growth. E. the lack of clear and accountable processes for managing visa programs, including the government's failure to enforce promised restrictions. F. the uneven impact of immigration, creating unsustainable pressure on cities while diverting resources away from rural and regional areas and stifling their development. G. the failure to address critical skill shortages through alternative methods, such as increasing apprenticeship subsidies and investing in local workforce development instead of relying on high immigration. And H. any other related matters. This is because, and I'm driving this, as I have done for nearly 28 years, is the profound effect it has on the Australian people, with reference to the cost of living, housing affordability and availability, the provision of services, public infrastructure, the natural environment and on Australian society. Now, one of the main reasons Labor's support is eroding in the electorate is because of the record immigration it has enabled and the disastrous impact it is having. Labor doesn't understand, and has never understood, that immigration policy must serve Australia's best interests. That's why immigration policy under Labor always works against Australia's interests. It might work in Labor's interests, but that is most definitely not the national interest, no matter what delusions the party may have about it. One nation policy on immigration is one that serves the nation's interests and is a policy that treats living in Australia as a privilege to be earned, not an entitlement, and respects the Australian culture and way of life and not divide us based on race. It ensures that people have demonstrated loyalty and allegiance to Australia over a long period of time, of up to 8 years, before they get citizenship, not the current 2 years, that they can apply for it, and permanent residency. We want to know who these people are. Have they got criminal records? Are they actually going to give their allegiance to Australia? To ensure that a significant breach of Australian law by an immigrant proven in a court results in immediate deportation and a permanent ban on that person ever coming to Australia again. Ensures social cohesion by prioritising immigrants from countries with similar cultures and values and denying immigration to people from countries which don't. Prioritises immigrants with skills and qualifications that our country needs. Prioritises Australia's national interest over humanitarian and political considerations and over international agreements. Forever ensures that those who come here without permission can never live here or come here again. Does not set annual refugee targets and puts Australians' interests ahead of international refugee agreements. Never permits the importation of extremist ideologies incompatible with Australian values like the rule of law, secular democracy and equality, and deports them if they slip through. Never compromises an Australian's ability to obtain employment, enrol in study or secure a home. never places an undue burden on public infrastructure and public services, and never, ever puts the safety of Australian people at any risk. Quite simple. It means I'm very patriotic to my country and the people out there who have been screaming out for so long that they want to have a debate or a discussion on immigration. As we've all seen, Labor's immigration policy does none of these things. It is working directly against our interests. If you want an immigration policy that serves Australia's national interest, you cannot possibly vote or support Labor. Don't even get me started on the Greens, who hate Australia and actively work against our national interests. The Greens should be completely dismissed from any debate on immigration. As for the Coalition, some of them have the right idea and some do not. They know who they are. We need a national summit on immigration and we need a national plebiscite on immigration. We know for a fact the majority of Australians want much lower immigration levels. That's evident constantly all the time. They're crying out for it, but they can't understand why the politicians aren't listening to them. We know for a fact that Labor, the Greens and the Coalition don't care that the majority of Australians want much lower immigration. And I can say that because we don't see immigration lowered enough to actually look after the Australian people first and foremost. They all voted against my immigration plebiscite bill. Why? Why? Why wouldn't you give the people a say in this? Because you think you're better than them. The Coalition even said the issue was too complex to put to the Australian people in a plebiscite. I think that's more of an indication of the major parties' contempt for the intelligence of the Australian people, who are more inclined to suffer the impact of high immigration. I was right about immigration in 1996 and multiculturalism. Everything I warned about has come to pass, and I'm right today. Immigration will be a major issue at the next election, and it's the party with an immigration policy in the national interest that will win votes. You underestimate the Australian people, and I can tell you that won't be Labor. I'm moving this inquiry because we must have a real national debate on immigration policy, and this could serve as a start. The government's immigration policies are failing Australians. Immigration should be tailored to the wishes of the Australian people. The Australian people are tired of suffering the impacts of high immigration on their daily lives and overcrowding. They're tired of going homeless, paying higher rents and managing their higher mortgage payments. They're tired of waiting for weeks or months for a doctor's appointment or waiting for hours in crowded emergency departments. They're outraged at the extreme important by migrants, such as the appalling outbreak of anti-Semitism in Australia, happily promoted by the Greens. The Australians want their country back, and it's time we gave them a voice on immigration. Under this Labor government, we've looked at bringing in 1.5 million people into the country. In just January and February alone this year, I think it was 125,000 one month, 100,000 the second month. That's in 2 months alone. We've had, I just came from Cairns. Well, they had people running around trying to find accommodation for 60 Sudanese. 60 Sudanese. And the fact is, you've got Australians there that are homeless, can't get accommodation, but no, it's all right. We need to bring these people and find them homes. And the whole fact is that, you know, the impact it's having on us. In 22-23, 737,000 people were brought into the country under the Labor government. 51,605, they say they brought them in for the skilled migrants. Of that amount, 737,000, only 51,605 were skilled migrants. And they said we need it for the building industry construction. Of that, only 1,800 had those skills. So that was a lie, a scam. We just can't keep going the way that we are. And as I said to you, the people in this place, you're so out of touch with the general public who've been screaming about high immigration for a long time. And yet you keep putting more pressure on the people with higher electricity, higher cost of living, And the cost and your higher electricity is because you're actually driving the carbon emissions trading scheme with the agreements that you've signed, and the whole fact that's putting more pressure on the Australian people. Yet you keep bringing in more migrants into the country, which is going to cause more carbon emissions, which is going to impact on us. So what is it? So is the climate change a scam, so really high immigration doesn't have an impact on it, or you really don't care? Or is it because you're propping up the GDP, because you're in a hell of a mess in running the country that you need high immigration, then to prop up the state of the nation, and that we are really in a per capita recession? And I hope that people wake up to this, because you're absolutely hopeless and incompetent in what you're doing in running this country. And I hope you're thrown out in your ear at the next election, because I'll be doing everything that I possibly can to make that happen. But high immigration really needs to be addressed. And you haven't listened to the Australian people, and I keep saying this all the time. I actually assisted. This is where it's really hard when in Queensland, as I've moved across the state and to other states as well, and I was in WA just a couple of weeks ago. And this woman of Aboriginality, she actually came up and she said, I can't get housing. She said, I'm living in the toilets there and I've been lived there for the last 14 months. And she said, I can't get housing. And she asked me for assistance, and I said, look, I'm going to see what I can do for you to try and see why you're not getting housing. And then you have the health issues, but this is happening in Queensland. People live in their cars and they're living under the bridge and in tents and parks. And I've been to the parks and I've actually fed the homeless. So that's things that I've tried to do the best that I can as a Member of Parliament to assist these people and to get them housing. But then again, we have the health issues. As I said to you, these people can't get the health. They can't get operations that they require because there's too many people in the country. We have not provided for the infrastructure. We haven't provided the hospitals or the schools, and all the problems that we're seeing now is because it was not planned. The politicians in this place, what you've done is in your short term that you're here for the 3 years, you only look at it from this period of time. Long-term vision is not here anymore. You're not looking down the future. It's what suits you for the time being. Long-term planning, long-term vision, you don't get it. And that's why the people are suffering all the time. They can't have the operations. You can't get them in. The emergency departments are actually flat out. We don't have enough doctors. And there was a young girl, 9 years of age, that I actually paid for her tonsillectomy operation, personally paid for it, just a couple of months ago, because she had it for 7 years, couldn't get in to have the operation. And she was getting to a stage where she couldn't go to school. She was missing 1/3 of the term out of school, and she was in a hell of a mess. And when you see that happening to the Australian people, why am I so adamant about cutting back on immigration in Australia? My duty is to the Australian people first and foremost to ensure that they have the best of health care, education, nursing homes, aged care, that they have all this. We're not representatives for the rest of the world. We can't do it. And when you walk the streets out there, if you really empathise with the Australian people, you would know that this needs to be addressed. It's the biggest issue. It's the biggest issue that's affecting people in Australia is the immigration levels. And it's just deplorable. It's a shame on this government of why they have allowed it to continue. And you're backing your mates out there, whether it's the unions or whether it's the big business, that they want higher immigration because they're selling more product. Yet it's the average person out there that has to suffer this all the time. They're the ones that have to put up with this because they can't get the housing. Then you're worried about, the youth out there, whether they'll ever own up their own home. And another thing we need to address is the housing issue with foreign investment. But that's another issue. I hope that you will support this notice motion, have an investigation into this on behalf of the Australian people, to discuss this matter, give the people the right to have their say, and let's have a decent debate on this discussion and see where we're headed as a nation. And I'll continue to fight for the Australian people.
Hey.